Hey, Kids Ministry leaders. My name is Stephanie Chase.
And Stephanie Rogers.
And we are your co-hosts for the Kids Ministry podcast.
All right. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are going to talk about kids.
Ooh, our favorite subject.
I know. We love kids, don't we? Yes, we do. And so, what we're going to talk about today is how they develop and how they learn.
Oh, these are great topics because as teachers in a classroom, whether you are a Sunday morning teacher or Wednesday night teacher, a weekday teacher, this is important stuff to know.
Yes, because we want to teach the way children learn, not the way we learn.
Right.
So we need to talk first about how children develop.
All right.
This is one of my favorite things.
I know it is. It's her favorite thing.
I love this. But there are 5 basic ways that children develop.
All right, let's have them.
Let's go. All right. So the first one, listeners, if you're watching, I don't know, you might be listening, but if you're only listening, go ahead and get your guns up, your muscles, okay? Because children develop physically. Yes. And I mean, this is really obvious.
It is, but what does it mean that children develop physically?
Yes. So when you take an infant and you look at an infant, right? Okay, when they first develop, when they're first born, they can move their eyes from side to side, but they have no control over any of the other.
Lots of involuntary movements. You got your palmer's grasp. When you put your finger in the palm of their hand, they just grip it.
Yes. So that's where we are as infants. Then as we get a little older, we start to crawl. Then we stand.
Oh.
Then we walk. Yes. And what we want to say to you, listeners, is make sure every child crawls.
What happens when we crawl?
You tell me. What happens?
So you're crossing your midline when you crawl. And that means that your right hand might go up and your left foot goes up.
Yes.
And you're doing that opposites. This, believe it or not, is pre-reading.
Yes, it's exercising your brain.
Yes, you are learning, your body is learning how to organize all of those movements. And when it's skipped, a lot of things are skipped developmentally.
Yes, so we want to make sure everybody's crawling in all of our churches, our weekday programs, wherever you're leading, we're crawling.
Which leads me to say, get those babies out of the containers.
People, are y'all putting your babies in containers?
No container seats. That's
What?
those exosaucers.
Get them out.
Get them out of there.
Yes.
We try to not have any exosaucers or limit the number of exosaucers in a room because that's containing a baby, and containing a baby means you're containing movement. Containing movement means they're limiting their development.
That's right.
We're not limiting any development around here.
No. So get those babies on their tummies.
Yep.
Right? Where they can lift that neck, get that tummy time going, working those legs and those arms, so important. So then we're crawling, then we're walking.
Yep.
Then we're running.
Ooh.
Yes.
Well, maybe some of us are running.
Okay, we're talking about kids,
Okay,
not
that's
us.
right. That's right.
Thank goodness. But kids love to run.
Yes.
Right? Then they're hopping, they're jumping, skipping.
That's a
right?
huge one.
And then we're starting to do somersaults.
Ooh.
I had a little girl in a class just on Sunday. She had to show me all of her cartwheels and her back bends and all the things.
Which is huge for them to be able to progress through those physical development.
Yes. And so because children are developing physically, we've got to provide activities where children are physically moving.
Woo, let's do it.
Yes, because we want to remember the more they sit, the less they learn.
That's huge. The more they sit, the less they learn.
Because when they're up and they're moving and they're doing, that's when they're learning.
Yep.
Okay, so physical development.
Yes, we got it.
Yes. Okay. The second one we're going to talk about is mental development. Yes. And their little minds are growing, developing, and Steph, this is what we talk about all the time.
Yep.
Children today are struggling to think for themselves.
I cannot tell you how many times I wish parents, teachers knew how important it was for kids to struggle mentally.
Yes. What do you mean by that?
So we oftentimes will answer the question for the child or solve the problem for the child and not allow them to think through the problem on their own or solve the problem on their own. You have a great phrase you say when you want children to think about something that they're doing. You say, well, what do you think you should do?
Yeah.
It's so simple, but genius at the same time.
What do you think you should do? Well, and here's an example. A few Sundays ago, a little girl came up to me and she said her friend, we'll just call him, let's pick a name, Jason. Her friend Jason, he's bothering me. He's pushing me. He's hurting me. Well, she actually said he's bullying me.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's a big word. And so I said, well, what do you mean by bullying? And she said, well, actually, he's calling me names. And I said, oh, he called you a name, which, listeners, this is a good thing to do, is help children, instead of use the word bully, identify the actions that are happening and label those actions.
That leads to problem-solving skills on your own. When you can label the problem and you can identify what's happening, you can fix it.
Yes. So we recognized that he was calling her a name. And so when she said that, I said, okay. And I stopped talking. And she repeated herself and she said, he's calling me a name.
She wanted you to fix the problem for her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay. She told me a third time. And I responded, okay. And finally, she got mad and I said, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, this is between you and him, not me.
Which this recenters the problem. Instead of it being placed on the teacher, it places the problem-solving skills on the child. Yes. And it's okay that they don't know how to solve the problem. That's why we're here. But it's important for them to know this is a problem for me to resolve.
Yes. Yeah. And that was like mind-blowing for her.
Yeah.
So she ran and got the little boy and she brought him to me.
Oh, she's trying to solve the problem.
She's trying to solve the problem. And so she points at him and says, he called me a name. And I said, okay. Well, we went through that again. I said, well, what do you think you should do? And then she looked at him and she said, you called me a name. And he replied, stay away from me.
Oh, so maybe she was causing the problem, perhaps. And he was problem solving on his own already, but she wasn't sure how to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I looked at her and then they both ran off.
Oh. And did you do anything to solve their problem?
I did not do anything.
But it sounds like she figured out how to solve the problem. He told her what she wanted him, what he was supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Yes. And so what we've got to do is we've got to help children think for themselves. And in a previous podcast, you may have heard us talk about learning centers. Mm-hmm. If you have not, you're going to want to listen to that one. But when they're playing in learning centers, they are problem solving nonstop.
What are some great learning centers for problem solving?
Puzzles.
Yep.
Children need to work puzzles. Listeners, hear me. Not on an iPad, not on a tablet, not on a phone. They need handheld because that's physical. Okay, combined with the mental, they've got to learn to work puzzles. Yeah. Even building with Legos.
I was going to say building with blocks, you start learning the rights of others in block building. And that is a huge win for kids when they start learning the rights of others. I mean, I can't knock down everybody's blocks.
Which that takes us to the third way that children develop. It is emotionally. Ooh. Oh, wait. This is emotionally. Sorry, I got to look. And socially. Yes, really. I guess we'll go with socially.
Social emotion.
All right. So socially, okay, we're going to do this because we're going to think about others. Socially, okay. We started with physically. We went to mentally. We're going to be problem solvers. We're not going to solve problems For children, we're going to let them play in learning centers and solve problems on their own without teachers hovering, parents hovering. And then when they're playing, they're developing socially.
Which is huge for kids to be able to do this too.
Yes, to learn how to get along with others. Because when I'm playing with somebody, like you said, and I knock down their building, what happens socially?
I have to solve that problem.
Yeah.
But the consequences for learning how to solve the problem now versus how to solve the problem when I'm 18 are hugely different.
Yes.
If I can problem solve now, my consequences are small. I may have hurt a friend's feelings, but when I'm 18, 19, and I haven't learned that skill, the consequences are huge.
Definitely.
When I'm trying to figure out, how do I solve this problem? How do I get along with others?
Yeah, so socially, we're talking about how to get along with others.
Yep.
And so this is how children are developing, and it's really cool to watch them because at age 2, it's all about me. The world revolves around me.
They're very egocentric.
Yes.
It's all, everything in the room is mine.
Yes. And when they play, they don't play with other children.
No.
They're playing in their own world, in their own lane, and it's all about me.
Yeah.
Okay. But when they start turning 3 and even sometimes later 4, they begin to do what we call parallel play, where they're like, oh, there's other people in the room.
Other people do exist. Look at that.
Yes. And I can play with them. I can interact with them.
And they might play next to a friend.
Yep.
And they'll have their own sets of the Legos or blocks, whatever they're playing with, but not interact together. That's parallel play.
Yes, but when they start playing together.
Oh, this is exciting.
This is when we're sharing. This is when we're learning to take turns. And like you said, they've got to have the experiences where, I wanted that. That's mine.
Right.
And I grab it and it makes somebody else angry. Oh, I made somebody else angry. Now what
My
am I gonna
actions
do?
have consequences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like we talked about with our example earlier, when children are developing socially, we cannot step in and tell them what to do. We've got to give them the opportunity to work out that social until it's unsafe, of course.
If we do that, we really are robbing them of the stepping stones of development when we solve their problems.
Yes.
We're taking it all away.
Whether it's mentally, whether it's socially.
Or physically.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
Definitely physically. That's great. Yeah. So they develop physically, they develop mentally, they develop socially. And even for those of you who are teaching preteens, okay, you're going to start moving into puberty. You're going to start seeing those 4th and 5th graders. Oh, there's girls in the room. The boys will say, wow, where did they come from? I never noticed that before.
Where they been?
Right. And that happens in those 4th and 5th grade years. You start to see that. And so there's a whole nother level of social development. That's why learning at such a young age is so important. Because like you said, those consequences at 18 are huge.
And you do start seeing those friendships form in different circles more. And that's, as a teacher, when you can help children understand that we love all people. We include all the people.
Yeah, we love them and we can play together. You know, I was at the pool with my grandson probably a month or 2 ago. And there was another little boy at the pool. And my grandson said, hey, do you want to play with me? And he said, yeah. And so they decided that they were going to get a float and they were going to play on this float. And then the other child decided, well, let's climb. So they're both trying to get on this float. It's not working. So the older child gets out of the pool and is standing there. Right. And my grandson is trying to get out of the pool. He's younger. He's struggling. He can't make it work. Right. And he looks at the other boy and says, hey, help me out. And so the kid said, okay. So he grabbed him by the arm, pulled him up a little ways, and then he made it the rest of the way out of the water.
And you did not problem solve for anybody.
No, and they were working together.
Yeah.
And then what was so interesting is later on, I can't remember which one of them said, I don't want to play with you anymore. Mm-hmm. And not one mom or teacher jumped in and said, that's not nice. You don't say that. Nobody jumped in, but the child said, I don't want to play with you anymore. And the other kid said, okay. And they both jumped in the pool and swam off.
And which is huge.
And it was
they're
okay.
both age appropriate. It's yes, if adults would just learn to say okay.
Yeah, and stay out of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Let them learn to get along with their peers. So physically, mentally, socially. And hey, Steph, I love what you say. We've both been reading this book, The Anxious Generation. If you have not read it yet, listeners, we highly encourage you to read The Anxious Generation.
It's one of the greatest and it's a fast read. It's one of the greatest explanations of this generation I've put my eyes on.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it talks about the play-based
Versus screen-based.
versus screen-based. And when we're talking about these this social development, share with us what your passion is from that book.
So screen-based versus play-based learning. When you are learning something on a screen or you're interacting on a screen, you usually have a character of some kind.
Yes.
And that character is doing the discussions with the other people. They're interacting with another character on the screen. That character is doing all of the physical jumping, leaping, fighting off, whatever they're doing. And they're doing there's usually pre-written little phrases that the player can choose, and they're doing all of the social development. And so you, as the player, you're not actually learning any social skills, you're not developing physically, you're not developing mentally, but your avatar, your character is. And so the kid is learning absolutely nothing.
Because they're just watching.
They're just watching. But if you are playing and you have tangible items in your hand and you have real friends next to you, you're actually learning how to interact with somebody socially. You're actually developing physically. You are using your mental skills to solve problems. And so you are actually doing the thing versus having it in some far off world that doesn't really exist.
That you're just an observer of.
Right.
Yeah. And we're seeing that in kids.
We are seeing that all over. I don't know. I went to the grocery store recently, and the kids that were in the baskets, the mom had the kids in the baskets, and the tablets were on the floor of the basket, and the kids had their eyes glued. They had no idea that there were other people in the grocery store, and they were missing out on all the experiences to look at people and say hi and have touch the items on the grocery store shelves and observe all the things and have a discussion with their parent. They're so in tune to these tablets that they have no idea that there's a real world that God has created for them to interact with around them.
Yes. And it's robbing them of their development.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
I love it. Thank you. So listeners, grab that book because that's a good read, The Anxious Generation. So physical, mental, right? Social. Now let's talk emotional.
Oh, this is good.
Emotional development. Okay. Children are developing where they learn that I can do it or I can't do it.
Right.
I'm angry.
What do you do with that anger?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sad.
Yeah.
I'm hurt.
I'm happy.
I'm happy. Yes. I'm disappointed.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
But all of these emotions children are experiencing, they are all developing and they're learning, what do I do with these emotions?
Yes, which is so important for them to learn these in the appropriate developmental steps, because if we skip one, we're not going to learn what we need to do to get to the next one.
Yes, yes. So providing those play-based opportunities where children can develop emotionally.
Yeah.
Yes. And learn, what do I do with my emotions?
Right.
Okay.
When my friends knock over my blocks, what do? Do I hit them? Do I say, it's okay, let's rebuild it? What do I do?
Yeah. Or if I'm in fourth grade and somebody pulls my chair out when I'm fixing to sit down and I fall on the floor. I saw that happen recently. Yes. I was like, really? Okay. What do I do?
Yeah.
So emotionally. And then the last development is spiritually.
Ooh.
And that's where you listeners, and that's where we are so passionate, because the world is not helping our children develop spiritually.
It is not.
And
it's not supposed to.
Yep.
Yep.
Who's supposed to?
The Lord. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are. We as kids ministry leaders, we as followers of Jesus Christ, we as Christian parents, it is our job to disciple, to train up this next generation, to teach them God's word, right? To point them back to Jesus. So there will be another episode on how to teach children the Bible. So tune in for that later. But these are ways children develop. We got the ways children develop. But now, how do children learn?
Oh my goodness.
Yes. How do they?
We only have a 20-minute podcast.
I know. We're going to go fast on these. I'm so sorry. But the number one way children learn is through play.
Yeah.
We said the longer I sit, the less I learn. The more I sit, the less I learn. Children learn through play, and they're developing in all 5 of those ways. We call that the whole child when they are playing. And that's all the way through 5th grade. If you give a child, let's say elementary kids, an empty room and a ball, they're going to start playing. You don't have to tell them what to do. They're going to figure out a game. You'll see the leaders rise to the surface. You'll see the organizers start organizing the game because they want to play. They're not going to sit in a circle and listen to one person talk.
No. And which you say another great thing. You say, the more we talk, the less they listen.
Yeah, the less they learn. Yeah, the more we talk, the less they learn. Yeah. So we have to quit talking and let them talking. So what that means, teachers, helpers, leaders, whatever you are in your classroom, children need to play. Because that's how they learn. All right, give us another way, Steph. Can you?
Curiosity.
All right, children are very curious. They're going to touch it. They're going to put it in their mouth. They're going to smell it. They're going to, even
investigate it.
Investigate it. Our elementary kids, they are curious. So if you have the same things in your room week after week, nobody's going to want to play with it because they're not curious. It's not exciting anymore.
And if you take everything in the room and shove it against the wall, and make it, a clearer space, and there's no fun turns in the room, there's no fun corners to investigate, it's going to be a boring classroom.
Yeah. So you've got to bring in fresh, new items, like we talked about, the learning centers, to pique that curiosity.
And also helps with behavior.
Yes, it does. Excellent. Okay, another one is satisfaction. I like this one because I've seen children before if they're painting, like elementary kids, when they're painting, they'll get frustrated. And they'll rip up their paper and they'll throw it in the trash can, right? Is that okay? Yes.
Yeah, and don't be disappointed as a teacher that they did that. You might think, oh, they didn't like this activity. They're struggling. That means they're learning.
Yes, they are learning. So they're going to do it again. And do it again until they're satisfied with what they've created.
And you can tell a child is satisfied when they say, look what I made. Look what I made. Look at it.
Or I did it. I did. Look what I did. Yes. They're going to tell you when they're proud of themselves. And that's how they learn when they feel that satisfaction.
And it's good that they had to struggle to get there.
Yes. And another way is repetition.
Oh, you mean saying the same thing 15 times?
Yes. That's how they learn. And they learn by doing it over and over. Have you ever seen a child work a puzzle, and they finish and they dump it out and they start over again?
And you might think as an adult, well, why'd they do that?
Because they're learning. They learn through repetition. And I've had teachers say to me, this happens at our church sometimes. Like, we have a kids worship for elementary, and then we have our life groups. And they'll say, you can't teach the same story. Okay, because they've already heard it. But it's better for them to hear it again because they learn through repetition.
And a different teacher is going to teach it a different way and have different activities that go with it. And having all those different inputs is huge.
Yes.
They're going to really know that they know those stories.
Yes. Yes. And another way children learn is through imitation.
Oh.
Yes, they imitate their parents. They imitate you. Because that's how they learn.
And that means, like, if you're the teacher and you've told all the kids, okay, we keep our feet on the floor and we don't sit on the tables, and then you go rest on the table for a second, they're going to be like, you just said we don't sit on the table. I guess it's okay if we sit on the table.
Let's climb up on the table.
Let's do it.
Yes, because they learn through imitation. They learn from imitating our words. You hear children do this all the time. They're just repeating what they've heard.
Exactly.
Right? So be very careful what we say. Yes, we want to say good, kind, positive words.
About the children, about each other. We want to say positive things about another teacher in another room because they're listening to all of our conversations. They're learning through all of it.
Yes, through imitations. All right, and then the last one is their senses.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they learn through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. So teachers, if you are bringing in a color worksheet and they're sitting there coloring, what senses are they using?
Maybe eyesight.
Maybe eyesight. Yeah. I guess they're touching the paper.
Maybe smelling the crayon.
Okay, but what if instead of bringing in a piece of paper that is a fish that we're just going to color, what if you brought in a fish from the meat market?
I love it.
You're going to smell that thing.
Yep. Maybe a couple classrooms down.
Yeah, you're going to touch that thing. It's going to be
slimy.
Yes.
Cold.
Yes.
Squishy.
Yes. Okay. And so this is what helps children learn when they use all 5 of their senses. Now, sometimes this can be scary for teachers.
It can be.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes. But you want to try it. Try those activities that incorporate all 5 senses.
Be the teacher you would want a teacher to be for you.
Yes. Do you want to sit and do color sheets, or would you really like to touch a fish?
Ooh, I'd really like to touch a fish.
Just don't eat it.
Yeah,
it might be
maybe
raw.
not.
Yes, exactly. So, listeners, we hope you've learned a lot about the children that you're leading, that you're teaching, the 5 ways they develop, how they learn, and take this into consideration as you prepare, as you plan for the children in your room, as you interact with the kids in your room.
It'll make all the difference in your classroom.
It will.